When your legs don't work like they used to before. Look at this. What I got? I'm going to talk about the Enneagram. I got a question, a relationship question. Somebody saw my my video on the Enneagram. They're like, well, maybe I'll ask this guy about relationship questions. And so I thought, well, heck, at first I put these videos on there. I want people to kind of hire me to come talk to their organization, their churches, their business, and because the fact is and I'm all about trying to give people the tools. I'm a big believer that if you give people the tools, they'll eat for a lifetime. And the Enneagram is probably it's in my top 5 of things that have really made an impact on my life. And the Enneagram, took my business from nothing to $500,000. And why? It's because I learned how to work with people. And that was a skill that I didn't have. I mean, I always test as an 8-7. And so the Enneagram is really a big part of my heart, because it's through the Enneagram that I can't overstate what it's done for me. So I want to offer that. So somebody emailed me a question on relationships. Her name is Isabella. I think she's from somewhere like in Arizona. Gonna leave her last name off. She goes, how do I attract the right fella? She describes herself as not feminine, which is interesting. And then she goes, I want to attract somebody of equal caliber. Notice that she said caliber, like almost like a gun. She wants someone that challenges herself to be herself. And then she talked about confrontation. And, one thing let's kind of talk about 8 energy, kind of to refresh it a little bit. And again, the Enneagram, there's 9 different energies. And I'm a big believer that while I think people have a home base, we got to be careful of saying I am an 8. Because sometimes if you have a prejudice towards that 8, you'll tend to, I don't know, for example, like if I say I'm an 8, well, the fact is 8s, 8s can disintegrate into 5, and I have an 8-7, so my 7 integrates into 5, and my 8 disintegrates. So I have a nuclear 5. And we got to be careful that we don't say I'm an 8, because, I've never met an 8 that didn't have a 5 or didn't have a 2. And 8 energy integrates into 2, okay? So 2 energy is the most loving. 8 energy is the most harsh. And so when you look at the challenge with 8 energy, is you have this paradox of the most loving encapsulated in this 8 fortress fuck you and world, and it's weird, and I don't, like I said, those who can't teach. And she goes, I want to attract the right fellow. And so she sent me an email, and she's asking for some advice. And okay, well, let's start with Rumi. Rumi says, seek not for love. He says, but rather seek to remove the barriers that you have built within yourself against love. So it's not that we shouldn't seek for love or seek the right fella or seek the right chick or seek the right girl. It's about learning how to remove the barriers that we have built up in our ego, and that's just what we call the ego, is just barriers against love. And so how do we go back to love as an 8? Well, one thing to not do, and let me start with what not to do. Like the Hippocratic Oath, they say, first do no harm. But first of all, let's not deny your 8 energy. And females have a unique challenge with being an 8, because a lot of the things that we celebrate in men, strength, caliber, challenging you, we kind of associate with masculine energy, or we celebrate with masculine energy. But with feminine energy, we don't celebrate that as much. Like, we don't really celebrate women who bust balls. We don't really celebrate women who are dominant. We still have a lot of those, Ozzie Harriet background. So the first of all is the Rumi quote. Second of all, you were created in advance to be who you are. And your inherent strengths as an 8, female or male, is the fact that you are truthful, you are strong, you do challenge people. I mean, go watch the Tiananmen Square, massacre, where that guy stands in front of the tank, and he's probably a 9 energy, but that's a 9 at his 8 place, a fuck you, and he's telling his government, fuck you, you're not gonna do this. And that's the Tiananmen Square guy. And so one of the challenges about being an 8 is to drop the fortress and to learn how to love. And that's really one of the challenges that all the energies, like, you know, the ones need to learn how to love without the hypocrisy of the Norman Rockwell and all the Instagram filters, and the twos need to learn how to really love themselves. You know, twos usually form an identity around who they love, but they have a hard time loving themselves. And again, eights go into two. And then three energy, just, you know, they struggle with just, you know, not going to LA and, you know, becoming actors. And they can act it, but learning how to actually do it from a heart level. And then four energy, leaving fantasy. And five, you know, I mean, loving a five, I mean, dude, that's like loving a calculator or a physics book sometimes. And six energy, that's an impossible love if you can figure that fucker out. And seven energy, generally, they, you know, again, I have a seven wing, eight with a seven wing. Seven energy generally struggles with love, with trying to, having to grow the fuck up and learning that sometimes love is not always going to be ice cream. Sometimes it's going to be discipline, and sometimes it's going to be hard work, and sometimes you have to be patient and listen, and you know, and then the nine energy is just learning how to not be apathetic lumps on a log. So all the energies have problems, and the Rumi quote says, "Seek not for love, but to seek the barriers." And if there's one way that the Enneagram, the one thing that the Enneagram speaks to, the Enneagram speaks to so many things, but if there's one primary thing it speaks to, it's learning how to recognize the barrier, the fortress, the stalwart that the rampart that we've built against love, and to open ourselves up. So how do we do it practically? Okay, let me kind of close out with some practical stuff, because, you know, last thing you need someone to do is to kind of retell you the problem. But I'm kind of letting other people know who watch this video that there is no better relationship tool, in my opinion, than the Enneagram. So loving an eight, or being loved by an eight. Number one is you have to understand the eight energies. Practice what Richard Rohr calls confrontational intimacy. And sometimes we only know love from a confrontational place. Like calling bullshit is actually a sign of affection. And I heard that, or I read that from Richard Rohr, where he says he called it confrontational intimacy. And I realized that when I walk into like a church or some place where I feel comfortable, if somebody's having a conversation over here and I don't want to interrupt, I'll just hit them and let them know I'm here. I'm here. And that's, there's a lot of God in that confrontational intimacy. I mean, God loves that way. He's like, I'm here. I got you. But sometimes eights, we have to understand that, often we have to understand that 95% of the people we meet just want to be affirmed and want you to be sweet to them. And they just want you to be nice and soft and boring and not challenging, and just say yes and be sweet. And eights, you're not going to like to hear this, because for eights, truth is our nectar. I mean, we fucking get off on it. You know, we're rigorous in our truth. Too rigorous at times. Confrontationally at times. But one thing, eights, you have to realize is that 95% of the people you meet will not have the appetite for your candor, for your honesty. I had a friend say to me once, and this is the wisdom of the nine speaking to my eight, and he was kind of walking through my divorce with me, and he was just kind of being a friend. And one time he heard me talk, and he said, he goes, John, he goes, have you ever realized you could say no without telling them to go fuck themselves? And it really struck me, because I realized that I never told people just no. I said, fuck you or fuck no. Like, I couldn't just say, like if somebody said, hey, would you like to go to fuck you? Fuck no. I mean, that was my knee jerk, and he saw it, and in a very loving, nine way, he says, have you ever been able to say no without saying fuck no? And it struck me, because he meant it with love. And so learning how to drop the confrontational aspect and then to channel our two, and you know, sometimes that's really hard, because eights, you know, as a general rule, we didn't bond with our parents. We're one of the unique energies that didn't bond with mom or dad. We often had abuse and have abuse in our relationships. So we come from toxicity. We're kind of these rampart fortress people, and then we're trying to love, and it's very, very difficult to unlearn those things. So I would point to the Rumi quote of learning how to remove the barriers within yourself. And then I would just say this, and this is even something that I've taken literally, and it's even a part of a tattoo that I got, and it's talking about the virtue of gentleness. And if there's one energy that I could say to the eights is learning to be gentle. And even in the Bible, it talks about God as a gentle spirit, calm spirit. And when my grandmother died, and I won't go into that story right now, but I felt an overwhelming conviction that God wanted me to be gentle. And what he was saying, John, is recover your gentleness. Recover that heart before your mom and your dad and I wasn't a foster child where I wasn't in the foster program, but I was kicked out when I was 12. I lived all different places. My senior year in high school, I lived in a dorm as a stowaway, and it was a really hard upbringing. You throw some other abuse situations in there, and so the last thing I want to be is gentle. And if you're loving an 8, and if your spouse is an 8, your boyfriend, girlfriend's an 8, you have to understand. Go watch the movie Good Will Hunting. Go watch that movie with them. I almost got emotional just saying that shit. Go watch that movie with them. And go see that scene where Matt Damon is having a very honest conversation with Minnie Driver. And he's like, what the fuck, you think you're going to go slumming with me? That's an 8 heart crying out for love. Good Will Hunting is a great movie. So 8s. The Rumi quote I would point you to, and then I would say, go watch the movie Good Will Hunting, and then go for a meditative walk and just say, Lord, show me your gentleness and show me my original heart of gentleness. All right, sorry to be all sappy, but somebody trusted me with the question. She wants to find the right fella, and I want to help her, and I can't do it for her. She's going to have to do it for her. But I will just say, it's hard. Relationships are hard. All the energies are hard. But learning not to deny who we are, but learning instead to say, I want to recover my original heart. And the wisdom of the Enneagram will help you do that. Anyway, email me, americano417@gmail.com. Boom. Avoid confrontational intimacy. Say no without telling them to go fuck themselves. Yes, you can do it. And just be sweet. That's just what people want. All right, you guys be good. See ya.